To say that I live in a divided nation is a major understatement. Somebody sometime said a house divided against itself cannot stand. And there are at least two nations within one border here. I've never seen this nation divided the way it is today. I obviously have very strong feelings about who's causing this and why. And there are all sorts of theories out there, and there are people who use big long names and things like that that are sure they know what's going on too. But it's very obvious to me that there are global forces at work that want ultimate power through technology. The USSR came along too early in history to be able to pull that off. Can you imagine what the KGB could have done with satellites and with the ability to trace every person, as long as they have one of these things? And I think I recall that South Korea required you to carry a phone during COVID so that they could follow you. And one major national election, and that could be happening here. And we could be facing, what would happen? Honestly, I'm just spitballing here. What if the government comes along and says, look, we're not infringing any of your rights or anything here. But you will carry a cell phone. And it will be registered in your name. And it will be attached to your identity. And that basically means you can be followed anywhere. Everybody and their second cousin will tell you that they will be talking about something out of the blue. Haven't talked about it before. And half an hour later, they have Facebook ads and all sorts of things going on. And everybody poo-poos that like, oh, no. But I've seen it happen. And what are you going to do when the government says, do it? This is for national security. This is for our safety. Now, these are the same people that opened the borders to foreign invaders, some of whom have proven that when you invade a country that was founded on Christian principles of responsibility, morality, I keep thinking of what Adams said. The Constitution was designed for a religious and moral people. It is totally incapable of governing anyone else. So someone comes here who has no morals, or their morality is whatever makes my tribe richer. As long as I can steal from you, that's great. I mean, that's Somalia. Somalia is a failed state, warlords. When you hear the word pirate today, what's the first word that goes with it? Somali pirate. Okay? I mean, and these are guys with machine guns that take over tankers and kill people to do what? To extort money. It's what their society does. And, I remember back when the Antioch statement said something about that some cultures are better than others. That was a given at one point in time. You can't say that anymore. But that was a given at one point in time. And so I look at my nation today and I look at the United Kingdom. I look at Europe. And Europe is led by suicidal individuals that are seeking to completely end the existence of their nations. And it may be too far gone to stop. It may be. They've opened the borders. There was a book I read in high school. I mentioned it once on the program. That was written back in the 70s about a third world invasion of Europe and how Europe lacked the capacity, the self-will to fight back and to stop it. It's not that they didn't have the capability. But it was the collapse of Western civilization that brought this about. And as with so many of those books written in the 70s, they've turned out to be prophetic in their fulfillments today. The name will come to me after the program's over. That's normally how it works. I'll be in the middle of taking the trash out and go, oh, yeah. Nations that choose their own self-destruction don't do so overnight. It's generational. And, a lot of people want to accuse, well, it's all the church's fault. I have always struggled with that. You can rightfully criticize the church for becoming too comfortable with the culture, not calling the culture to repentance. There's lots of stuff that you can do. But I just think of how many times there have been faithful churches in nations that came under God's judgment. And what happens to those churches when that happens? When judgment comes upon a nation, what happens to that church? Does not the church suffer with the nation itself? Were there not faithful Christians in Germany? Were there not faithful Christians in Dresden who died horrible deaths in the firebombing, which I still think this day was a war crime on the part of the Allies? The church suffers as well. But I don't know that it's right to blame the church. Everybody says that politics is downstream from religion. Well, I don't know if that's always true. I don't know when you have a majority of the population that doesn't allow the Christian faith or any faith really to have any meaningful impact upon the decisions they make. I don't know that it follows that that you can blame the church for all of these things. But right now we live in a divided nation in the United States, and the only possible solution that I can think of is the only solution we can offer. We can't have peace with one another when we aren't even seeking peace with God, with our Creator, our Maker. And what do you do with a nation that's become so benighted and so deceived that it doesn't think it has a Creator in the first place? Once you get rid of the Creator, the state becomes God. And I don't care if it's a MAGA state or a Biden regime or an Obama mess or whatever, that's what the state's going to become. And now with the technology that they have, that they possess, I don't know. Call me, my kids call me Debbie Downer all the time. But I just look at the last election and I realize there's one coming up in 10 months. And if things go a certain direction in 10 months, I can guarantee you if the House of Representatives falls into the hands of the communists, and can we call them communists now? Because they supported Mamdani. Mamdani is clearly a communist. All the people he's appointing are clearly communists. They're opposed to personal property rights. The state is God. The USSR has been reestablished in the city of New York. Once they have power in the House, nothing will ever get passed. Nothing can really get passed now. We do not have a functioning legislative branch. We don't. You can't get any type of major legislation through. The Senate used to be the place where you actually had to have cooperation based upon the betterment of the nation. Forget it. The left won't allow it. One election and the president will be impeached 10 times in the first week. But whenever they take their positions in January, there will be 10 petitions for impeachment, and 3 of them will pass. And that'll be the end of any, all this, we're winning and da-da-da-da-da-da. At the same time, I'm not the only one sitting here looking at some of the stuff that's being done even now. And I go, quite a precedent being set here. I'm not talking about like what's happened in Minneapolis. I don't know what's going to happen with that. Everybody said the same thing, and that is, well, here's George Floyd for the ICE generation taking place right there. That's possible. It's possible. But the nation has been invaded. And when the nation tries to uninvade itself, you almost end up in civil war. I don't see how a nation called the United States can long survive in the current context. I just don't. Oh, you're a pessimist. Well, I'm just simply looking at the nation going, what signs are there of a positive turn that is widespread that would allow the nation to extricate itself from its self-imposed divine punishment? Do you see anybody mourning over the murder of unborn children, the mutilation of young children, the profaning of marriage? Do you see any of that? Not even the Republicans are doing that. They're not even playing at it anymore. And, Trump, with the reversal of Roe v. Wade, figured that's it. That is no longer an issue for us. It's done. And hence is promoting stuff that is extremely anti-pro-life in its perspective. Because he's not really in his worldview. His worldview does not have a foundation for understanding what life is. Now, sure, there are people who write speeches for him, and he reads the speech. Fine. Does that represent what he actually believes? Because, honestly, the interview that was had with him, I think yesterday, about what are the limits on your use of United States military power globally, he said, my morality, not international law. That's, okay, one election. And the government uses that to promote LGBTQism and force nations to adopt these types of things and abortion, and they can do the same thing. Believe me, once they have the power, they won't let go of it. They won't let go of it. That's how it works. I said a couple weeks ago when we were talking about Mondani, a democratic socialist is simply a communist who gets elected. So he uses dumb people to vote for him and then holds power. A communist just uses a gun to get the power in the first place. It's the only difference. It's the same end point for either one. All of this leaves me, again, going, when November of last year took place, November of the year before, it's already been coming up on a year and a half, a few people said, hey, we've got some time. Well, that time is passing quickly. Very, very quickly. And the draconian exercise of executive power that happened under Biden, that now, because of the fact that our government's non-functional, has to continue under Trump, will be back under the next person, whoever it is, whether it's Republican or Democrat. It's going to be back. And eventually, it's going to be a communist. Can you imagine Gavin Newsom with the power of the White House? Can you imagine the threat to religious liberty, homeschooling, every single public school would be draped in enough rainbow flags to make you want to puke. They already are. I mean, the educational system in this nation has been completely taken over. There isn't a question. Does anyone have a question about that? Oh, I know, a nice Christian lady. They're not running things. You listen to these school board meetings, and it is astonishing. The people on these school boards are such amazing zealots for evil. They are the high priests and priestesses of the cult of Moloch. And you have to realize, in Germany, if you have children, they have to go to the public school system. You will be arrested and chucked in the Huskow, and the children will be put in state care if you try to homeschool them. And how far are we away from that? What could get in the way? Well, we have the Constitution. The Constitution as interpreted by whom? People who universally now have graduated from law schools that are completely soaked in an anti-Christian, anti-logic, anti-language communist worldview. That's nothing but a piece of paper. Nothing but a piece of paper. So, I don't know. I just get the feeling that people have bought into the, hey, we won, everything's going to be great now feeling, and it's like, but we're not making any progress. Oh, yes, we are. Well, show me where it's actually manifesting itself. Well, they're trying to They've deported a lot of illegals. Yeah, but in comparison to how many came through during Biden, what's the percentage? And okay, the border may be closed now. The instant Gavin Newsom becomes president, the border will be overrun. There won't be a border. There won't be a nation. And it'll all be said to be because we're so open and loving, and until the whole thing collapses, which is exactly what people in the shadowy conspiracy world, they're not really in the conspiracy world. They're pretty much out there. They're wide open. The UN and WEF and all these people, it's exactly what they want. Exactly what they want. And there's been a few bumps in the road, but they're not long-term detours. So all the questions we were facing in 21, 22 about government power and all that, they haven't gone away. We've just enjoyed the vacation without actually making any changes. And I'm saying this to myself. I mean, that's just sort of how it is. That's just sort of how it is.